Hello everyone, this is Tom. I'm a solutions architect at Cisco AS. In this demo, we're going to walk through the process of adding a vSmart controller to vManage. So this is going to be relevant if you've got an on-prem deployment. Remember we covered the 3 different possible models for bringing up your control plane. There's an on-prem where you are responsible for all the controller instantiation and certificate adding and all those tasks. You may have a cloud hosted model where Cisco will do that for you in AWS. And then there's also the model if you are a managed service provider and you're using NSO to add all your controllers and spin them up. So with me today, I have Chox, also from Advanced Services. How are you doing, Chox?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Doing great.
Good to see you again.
And also with us, we have Zane, who's a technical marketing engineer. Zane, how are you today?
Doing great, Tom. Thank you for having me.
All right. I hope you guys enjoy this demo. So with us today, we have Ali Sheikh, who's a technical leader. Ali is going to walk through the demo for us. So Ali, why don't you please take it away?
Thanks, Tom. So today we're going to look at onboarding a vSmart with a certificate in the system. The first thing we want to look at is the topology. In this environment, the demo has already been provisioned with a number of devices. The thing that we'll focus on is adding this particular second vSmart into this topology environment. So you'll see a number of vEdges already operationalized, the vManage, at least one set of vSmart, and a set of vBonds operational. This vSmart will be what we will bring into the system.
So that vSmart's already powered up. It's already got an address that's reachable. What you're going to do is now bring it into the...
That's exactly right. It's already configured insofar as it has an IP address, so I can console into it, I can access the device, and complete the bring up process. So what we'll look at next is the dashboard. We see here that the vManage is operational. We see that a pair of vBonds is operational. We see a number of edge devices operational, but only one vSmart is in the system. And so this is where we'll expect to see the second vSmart show up. Before we begin adding the device and issuing the certificate, the first thing that we want to know is what is the mechanism by which these certificates will be issued. That is governed at an administrative level within vManage. Here, on the administrative page for vManage, this section identifies the mechanism by which certificates will be issued and the organization name that will be printed inside the certificate that is going to be issued. This is set at the first time when you bring up your vManage and set up the parameters for your vManage. Looking further into the certificate authorization section, we'll see here that we're currently using the fully automated method. The fully automated method here leverages the fact that Symantec is going to be the certificate root of trust, where Cisco is going to submit the certificate signing request directly to Symantec and obtain the certificate. This is the process that we'll walk through first, and then we'll have a conversation about what it means to do it manually.
Ali, one quick question regarding the vSmart, and one way to uniquely identify is with the site ID and the system IP. Are we going to keep the system IP consistent between the 2 vSmarts?
The system IP and site ID are relevant from an overlay perspective. A system IP, similar in concept to a router ID, must be unique on a per-device basis. So you cannot have the same system IP on multiple devices. The system IP schema, again, is arbitrary. As long as it's a qualified IP address, you can issue that to the system, to the vSmarts, the vEdges, the vBonds, whatever the different appliances may be. So think of the system IP similar in concept to a router ID. With regard to certificates, there is no relationship between a system IP and a certificate. A certificate only guarantees identity. The system IP is going to be used for other purposes in the system once the overlay becomes operational.
Thank you.
So one more question. Since you have the validity period selected as 3 years, what is the minimum and maximum validation that you can select?
So when we look at the years that are specified here, these are the range of values, 1 year, 2 year, and 3 years. However, going forward, the standards with regard to certificates are expected to change, and these values will change as the certificate authorities decide new time spans for these validity periods.
Okay, thank you.
So once all of this is defined, this is when we're going to go and add in the vManage into the system. So we go into the Devices page. This is on the vManage section where we control our inventory. Because we're adding a vSmart, we want to bring in a controller. And so we will select this particular tab. Here we'll see that we have one vSmart, two vBonds, and one vManage. This is where we'll want to bring in that next vSmart. So we select the controller type. At this point in time, it asks me for the IP address by which I will access this vSmart that has been provisioned, some credentials by which I can log in, the protocol that will be used by the controller, and this parameter. That is, once this device is added into the system, generate the CSR and submit it to Symantec for signing.
Well, Ali, one quick question regarding the vSmart management IP address. Is that going to be the one that's reachable via your transport, or is that going to be your management IP address?
This IP address, for management purposes, this is an IP endpoint by which vManage can reach vSmart. This IP could be in the transport, but it is strongly advised not to be. This is ideally should be in the VPN 512, which is your out-of-band VPN. So this does not face your transport, does not face your service. This is an out-of-band segment which you leverage to bring into the environment. However, in principle, this will accept any IP endpoint that is resolvable and reachable.
So suppose if you use a transport address, you might have to relax some firewall rules in order to have the communications.
That's exactly right. If you're using a network segment that is facing the outside world, you will need to adjust the firewall rules accordingly. So let's plug in some values here. Now, right now, I'm going to deselect this because I'm actually going through the process of adding it myself. I'm going to want to generate this on my own time. If you check this automatically, the vManage will instantly trigger this behavior, generate the certificate signing request, and submit it to Symantec. So right now, I'm going to deselect it and go through the process step by step. So once I add in this device, vManage is going to reach out and is going to request a particular entry for this vSmart. Once I'm ready to generate certificates and submit them to the controllers, what I first want to validate is how quickly are these certificates being fetched. So what you'll see here is there's this entry, certificate retrieval interval. When vManage automatically generates the certificate signing request and submits it to Symantec, this is how long it will query Symantec, the interval after which it will query Symantec to get the particular certificate for the device. So right now, it is set to the lowest possible value of 1 minute so that the vManage repeatedly queries Symantec to obtain the certificate.
So for a production deployment, are all those defaults fine? For the purposes of the demo, is that why you're deselecting this? Or?
This particular value is safe even for production networks.
Okay.
This is usually done to optimize the pace with which the environment is set up.
Sure.
So if you want to expedite how quickly you bring up your infrastructure, it is advisable to use the lower value.
So when you add a new controller, which site will it be associated with?
At this point in time, it is not associated to any site. Okay. When you add in a controller, at this point in time, it has no additional parameters other than the fact that it needs an identity.
Okay.
And that identity is the certificate.
Got it.
Once it has an authenticated identity, then you propagate configurations to it. So now that we have set up our certificates, we have set up the vSmart entry in here. As you can see, in the time that I went, validated the interval, vManage has already sent the certificate request and installed a certificate and synced it with this device. What you will see here right now is that it doesn't have a system IP or site ID. So right now, this appliance has been added into vManage automatically. It has a certificate, it has the associated expiration date, but no other configuration parameters. The next thing we're going to do is operationalize this vSmart so that it shows up into the system and has a corresponding system IP and site ID. So we log into the vSmart. We make sure that it has the necessary configuration. So here it has host name, system IP, site ID that has been put in. And we're going to operationalize its interface. So right now, I'm enabling these two services, SSH and netconf, just so that I don't get locked out of the system, because that's how I'm accessing this device for this current session. We'll go back to vManage. We see currently right now there's only one vSmart. And here shows up the second vSmart. So as long as the certificate administrative settings are set correctly for your certificate authorization, that you ensure that the organization name is present, and for the authorization, you have plugged in the necessary parameters so that vManage can send the request to Symantec. Once this information is in place, you add in the vSmart from the controller section that is associated to the device inventory. And once you add the controller here, vManage will be responsible for handling the addition of additional vSmarts and making sure that they have the necessary certificate information present as well.
Now, Ali, one quick question regarding the automatic configuration. Since we selected automatic, it'll go to Symantec automatically, get
Yes.
the CSR will be generated, it'll be signed, and come back into vManage, and now your new vSmart controller will populate into your dashboard. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Now, that leads into the next question of what does it look like if you were to do it manually? What is that process like? The difference is very subtle. The difference, if you were to set it at a manual parameter, you edit this section and you switch it to manual. Once it's set to manual, what is now going to happen is on this page, vManage now knows that it is no longer responsible for the generation of the certificate signing request and submitting it to Symantec automatically. What it will now do is give you the mechanism to do this manually. So what you'll notice is that there is a new button that shows up that wasn't there before. And if you look at the menu items, you now have additional options where you now can also generate the CSR and reset the RSA tokens. So now the vManage is giving you the mechanism to do all of this manually. Generate the CSR, extract the CSR, submit it to your own root of trust, get the signed certificate, and then install it using this option. So it's still simplifying it for you, but now that you've made the decision to do it manually, all the options are now manual. And that, in a nutshell, is what it takes to add in any type of controller into this infrastructure.
So in the case of automatic certification generation, when was the site ID assigned to 20?
The site ID, again, was not assigned as part of the certificate generation.
Okay.
This was added when I operationalized the device. So this was when I just used the configuration and did it manually.
Got it.
In a normal practice, what you would want to do is after you've generated the certificate, the next step would obviously be going to templates and to attach the device to a configuration template.
A quick question is, does that interface have to be a tunnel interface in order to be a part of that overlay, or does it not?
Every single device in the overlay requires at least one tunnel interface. And so for a device to show up in this dashboard, it must have at least one tunnel interface. Now, there are various restrictions on the number of transports that are supported, what type of transport, so on and so forth, but one tunnel interface must be present to establish that kind of control connection.
And when the vBond is actually used, you do not want to configure that as a tunnel initially, correct?
Initially, that's right. So even when you saw what I did with the vSmart, I did not start out with a tunnel interface. The reason is you want to first ensure you have the necessary identity setup, which is the certificate, then a configuration element, and then you bring up the tunnel interface. So by the time you get to operationalizing the device, it has a unique identity, which is its certificate, and you have some configuration for that device that will provide it its system IP and its site ID. Now, in other mechanisms and other bring-ups, you'll see it's either done as a one-shot operation, where an orchestration tool will go in and get a certificate in place, as well as the system IP and site ID. But there are two separate elements to it. This is the identity, which is the certificate. And this is the configuration, which is the system IP and site ID.
And the site ID can be different amongst two different vSmarts. One can be a site ID of 10, and one can be...
That's correct. System IP and site IDs. So system IPs must be unique per appliance, per device. Site IDs, they are there to designate if multiple devices reside in the same site, then they should have the same site ID.
From a policy standpoint, it probably wouldn't play too much of a role since your vSmarts typically would have the same policy that it would be pushed down from vManage, correct?
The vSmarts will always have the same policy.
Right.
vManage takes on the responsibility of making sure all the data is synced up. So that's why you'll always see in various sections this mention of a sync, where vManage is making sure that there are no incongruent data sets on different devices. All right, that's it, Tom.
Ollie, that was very thorough. Thank you. Gentlemen, we have any questions?
Yeah, one question. I believe we always use root certificates. So when do you really need a certificate for authentication?
So when we talk about certificates, certificates always exist in pairs, insofar as the certificate that you have and the root that issued it.
Got it.
In our system, as you saw as part of this demo, we leveraged semantic issued certificates. So every appliance here had a unique certificate, but the certificate issuing authority was semantic.
Got it.
Now, if you look at the manual operation, that would be where you're using a different root of trust. That could be any other third-party entity, but they would be the issuers.
So VeriSign and others.
Exactly. It could be VeriSign, it could be DigiCert, it could be Amazon, Cisco, any number of those.
Okay.
So automatic will only work with AWS, or it's with semantic.
Currently, the certificate authorization that is built in, that Cisco provides, is leveraging semantic infrastructure.
And in our image, we have the semantic root of trust as well.
That is correct. The semantic root of trust is pre-packaged into the operating system, which is why you do not have to manually install a semantic root of trust into the system.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Ali, for covering that demo. Keep in mind, everyone, that this process that he walked through was demonstrating the way you would onboard a vSmart controller, adding a certificate to it into the system, but it could also be used for any controller. It could be used for a vBond as well. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you again.